Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to learn more about e-construction from a project manager's perspective. We have a little housekeeping to do before we get started. Throughout today's webinar, you'll be muted, but we'd love to have your participation. There is a Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. Please use this to ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. We will address as many questions as we can at the end. And don't worry if we don't get to your question. Every question will receive a follow-up email with answers to all the questions that were asked. Finally, we understand that we're all using Zoom with a variety of internet connection speeds, which may present challenges for some. As a result, you may experience connection issues that could make portions of this presentation difficult to fully understand. Be assured that a recording of this webinar will be available next week. I'm Mark O'Connor, and I'm a senior account manager at Infotech on the local government side. Of course, this market includes their consultants like HNTB. Danny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Danny Donlin. I'm a construction services manager for HNTB, covering the construction inspection work in the offices of West Virginia.
Thanks, Danny. Today's webinar is about what benefits you can expect when you change from a paper-based system to e-construction. We'll start by covering some of the things to think about prior to beginning your first e-construction project. Next, Danny will cover some of his most important lessons learned and best practices. This section makes me think of one of my favorite quotes. A smart man learns from his experience. A wise man learns from others' experience. We have a unique opportunity today to learn from a veteran e-construction user in Danny Donlin. Next, we'll do a quick review of what was covered, and last, we'll take a few of your questions. Okay, Danny, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role at HNTB, as well as the types of projects your office typically manages?
Sure. So I'm a graduate from West Virginia University. I've been a PE since 2000. Started the first part of my career with West Virginia Division of Highways. Spent 14 years there. Started out as a project inspector, worked my way up to district construction engineer. And then in 2011, I joined the HNTB team, still in the construction inspection contract management portion of the contracts. Primary clients are West Virginia Parkways and West Virginia Division of Highways. But for my full 25 years career, I've been in contract management, contract inspection type work. With HNTB since 2011, handling the construction inspection projects. Our HNTB is the general engineering consultant, or the GEC, for the West Virginia Parkways Authority. So we have a considerable amount of projects that we manage and inspect for them.
Thanks for that, Danny. Can you please share with us a little bit about your experience, as well as some of the knowledge you've accumulated over the years with this e-construction process? Towards that end, let's start with the project that you implemented e-construction on.
Well, I guess it's kind of been an evolving industry a little bit. I mean, when we first started, it wasn't called e-construction. When I worked with Division of Highways, in the earlier part of my career, they had an internal system that was made in-house. It was a project record system, PRS, and it was primarily just an accounting type software that kept track of the inventory coming in and what was paid for and generated monthly estimates. And then in the early 2000s, they replaced that with a new PRS system, which just was an enhanced version of the old PRS system, but it did allow for additional documentation of inspectors' daily reports, captured some more details on the daily reports, but still was more or less an accounting type software that kept track of what was received and what was paid. And then late 2000s, right before I joined HNTB when I was still with Division of Highways, they converted over to using Site Manager. And then moving over into 2011, when I started with HNTB, we would manage anywhere from 3 to 4, 5, 6 projects a year. Fairly small in size, and they were kind of specialized in the work that we did. So we maintained those on paper IDRs, inspection daily reports. Guys wrote the reports on paper and then scanned and uploaded those to the server, and then the project management team would take that information and create pay item tracking and progress estimates. But when that started out, there's 3 to 6 projects going on, not too many pay items on that, so it was fairly manageable to be able to do that. You can see from the map that's shown on the screen, Parkway's is 88 miles section of I-77, pretty much from Charleston, West Virginia to Princeton, West Virginia. So we would have projects anywhere along that 88-mile stretch. And our office is located 20 miles to the west. So we could have guys that are, could be 100 miles from the office to the project. So it created some logistics and some issues with trying to do those paper copies and getting them back into the server.
All right. Looking back on your earlier projects that you mentioned, when it came to daily reporting from the field, what issues or inefficiencies contributed to the business case of changing to a digital format?
Yeah, sure. Like you can see the steps that are listed out there on the screen. Multiple steps and a lot of lost production time, and the amount of time that it just took to get the information from the project to the end of the month to the point that they got to pay the contractor for the work that he's done. Multiple steps, a lot of drive time that's non-productive. You can see the logistical problem. We have a lot of single inspector projects. So if a contractor is working a 40-hour week, all the drive time, scan time, that was done typically on overtime to get that information into the server. Then once a month, the management team would have to go in and pull that information off of the server and extract that information piece by piece to put that information into Excel spreadsheets. So it added a little bit of, you had possibilities for data error on 2 locations there, taking the information from the hard copies into the Excel sheets. We also have a pretty strenuous QC system to be able to make sure that the pay estimates are accurate and correct. So going through those iterations and everything was just a lot of lost time that didn't really result in a whole lot of production, but it was necessary and it worked.
Okay. So how about the way daily reports are done now?
As you can see there, the information we had on the paper copies, were front and back of papers or scanned, and there's some issues with that. Now the information you can see is readily available to everybody. We give access. Of course, the owner has access to all this. We give read-only access to the contractors, so they have information for this. But you can see on the individual items, you can see all the details that are able to be included in it, location, the actual write-up on the individual items. Another neat feature is being able to attach pictures with descriptions. easily attached to the reports and greatly enhance the information that's provided with the daily reports.
Okay. Let's look back at the way pay estimates were created prior to e-construction. What was that like on a spreadsheet and paper versus e-construction today?
Yeah, so we would have to go into each individual day. So, on a normal month would be, 20 to 22 days. We're pulling out daily reports and we're going in, 8 to 10 items that were worked on a typical day, typical project. We're pulling those individual pay quantities off the inspector's report. We put those into an item tracking sheet. So there's somebody's manually taking that information from PDF versions that are scanned in, typing those into an Excel sheet. And then so that gives you a total pay for those items for that month. And then we take that information into the estimate sheets that calculates the unit rates times the amount of material that was placed to come up with the progress estimate that was due to the contractor. So that's very tedious and time consuming. There's room for data entry errors, even when you have your Excel sheets that are set up and done properly. We found sometimes where the cells weren't copied or pasted correctly, so there were some errors there, not capturing all the data. It was caught in the QC process, but we really had to go back and start that whole process over and find the errors. There's also opportunities in there for rounding errors. West Virginia uses a system that the estimate and the pay has to come down to the penny. So there's a lot of times, we'd be off a penny or two, and it would take a considerable amount of time to track down where that rounding error was at. As you can see on the screen now, the estimates are generated monthly. Previously, because of the time that it took to pull that information from the inspector's report into Excel sheets, and we were doing 3 to 6 projects or 8 projects a month, we got to the point where we couldn't process those in a 1 week time period. So we ended up having to stagger those the progress estimates out week by week. So we would do 1 or 2, maybe 3 of them in a certain week. So it kind of staggered and created a little bit of an issue with when the cutoffs were. When we send the estimates to parkways, they were constantly getting estimates. So it took a little bit of time for them to process those. And so when we've converted over to utilize an Appia, it eliminated the math errors. There's no longer any rounding issues or math errors. There's no problems with Excel sheets not having the correct formulas in them. It's presented out in a very nice format. You can go and see the progress and the status of each estimate. So you can see on the screen, there's several estimates that's been paid. That means the check's been kept or issued to the contractor. The approval's in process, and the one that's pending, we're still working on it. So you can see the status of it. You can see the dollar amount and the accumulation of those. So what it allowed us to do was go back to having all of our estimates are cut off at the end of the month now. So that makes it easy for us we can process them fast enough that we can send them in a batch to the parkways. So that also allows them to process those once a month instead of continually having to process a couple every week. And it has ultimately resulted in the contractor getting their payment quicker by those going into the batch at one time to parkways. They're able to process those quicker, which is ultimately a faster turnaround for the contractor's payment.
Okay. So thinking about all this, what sort of impact does e-construction have on the contractor?
Well, so the first one is just mentioned there on the contractor's payment. Of course, dollars getting into their account is very important to a contractor. So the impact to them is they get their payment faster, and it's accurate. The other thing is they have access to all the information that we create. So I've heard from numerous contractors, they really like looking at our information that we put in there. They say that we keep better records than their guys in the field. So any discrepancies they have, they're able to go in there and look at those and resolve those on their own. And it's also helped us from a management side of not having to address those issues that the contractor may have. So previously, when we had all that information on servers and the project records were on our servers, contractor doesn't have access to those. So it wasn't unusual to have a question from a contractor to come in to either a quantity resolution or just figuring out an issue that they need addressed. So that would come into the management team. The management team would have to research that information and then provide it back to the contractor and hope that that resolved it. And the way it is now, when we get those questions, the first thing we tell the contractor to do is, have you checked Appia? Go in there and look and see. So it really puts the burden back on them to solve some of those quantity disputes or discrepancies that they have issues with. And a lot of times when they go to our reports, they're able to resolve those on their own rather than us having to resolve that for them.
Okay. When it comes to reporting to your client on progress made or even change orders, what would you say is the biggest impact of a digital process?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest impact and benefit for the client is they have access to all the information. Similar to what I mentioned there with the contractor, we were kind of like the gatekeepers of all the information. If anybody needed to know anything, they had to come to us to get the information and we could provide it. The way it is with using Appia and everybody having access to it, the information's out there and readily available. It's just the owner has just as much access as the contractor does. And so they're able to go in and find out any information. They can check on the status, see what if projects got rained out or anything like that. And then that happens in real time. So an inspector drafts up a report right now. When he saves it, that information's available to the contract or to the owner and the contractor almost in real time. If you can go back up one more screen there, Mark.
Okay.
One thing I want to point out there is just the quick dashboard that the owner has access to. He can just log in to Appia. He can come in and he can see the current status of how the project is complete from a money perspective, a time perspective. He can see the amount of change orders, any retainage withheld, just a lot of quick information that they can find, and it's real readily available. There's all the projects are listed on there. In there, they can go down in a very short amount of time and jot down the status of all the projects. But they also have the ability, as well as the contractor, that they can drill down into individual items. So the way Appia works is we track those pay items in the daily reports. They can go into the item history, go down and pick out individual days and reference the individual reports. So it's very easy to navigate through the system to find out the information you're needing in a very short amount of time.
Very cool. That was really good. And I want to thank you for that. Let's now fast forward to closeout procedures. Can you paint a before and after picture for us?
Yeah, so under the paper copy system, the closeout really didn't happen till the end of the job. I mean, we used the progress estimates and everything to pay the contractor out and everything, but the project was really not finalized until the end. With the Appia, the way that it's set up is inspector generates a report and somebody else has to approve that report. So the finalization almost occurs at no more than a monthly basis when we generate the estimates. The daily reports have to be approved before they can be included on the estimate. So it's an internal QC process that the system has that kind of closes out the project as you go. We've seen a very dramatic decrease in the amount of pay item discrepancies at the end of the job. So that's been tremendous. The other thing that we like to use the system has is there's a section in there where you have a punch list activity. So we keep all we encourage the supervisors as things happen in the field and they identify as potential punch list items to put that in the section. Those remain in the punch list activity. So when it comes time to do the final inspection, the first thing we do is pull out the supervisors and punch list activities. So we've already got a leg up on getting that punch list started for the final inspection. The other thing it does, contractors have access to that punch list. So we've seen on numerous occasions where contractors have already eliminated a majority of their punch list activities while they're on site with their men and equipment rather than having to mobilize in. They know when those things are on the punch list activity that they're not going to go away until the work's complete. So it's made the final inspection and the project closeout a lot smoother because the actual final inspection punch list, we usually don't add a whole lot of activities on that because the supervisors kept up with that through the life of the project.
Great. Danny, I know you've got some experience assisting your clients with their bidding process and in helping them move away from paper-based bidding. When working with those clients who use HNTV to actually bid the project, can you talk about their issues or the inefficiencies of the paper process that led them towards a change to online bidding?
Yeah, so we've kind of evolved with Parkways through the first step was implement NAPI as the documentation software that we use for the construction inspection. The second step we did was start to utilize the Bid Express system to accept the bids. So normally on a normal year, Parkways will advertise and receive bids on 20 to 30 projects, sometimes more per year. Those typically, in the old way we used to do it with the paper copies, was everybody had to turn in an envelope with all the information that was required, including their bid. Everybody they had to turn that in at a certain time. Somebody would sit in the front of the room, open those envelopes, and read the bids. Then you would take that information, you would have an apparent low bidder at that point. You'd take that information back to the office, and then you would evaluate it to make sure that they had all the information included that's required. I mean, items like their insurance, the West Virginia contractor's license is valid, their bid bond is included. So then it would take a day or so, and then you'd have to also go back and tally up the amount that they turned in was accurate. The way that it goes now is the contractor can submit his bid up until the second that the bids are due, and he does that from his office. So we've got a lot of comments back from contractors. They really like the idea of the electronic biddings because it allows them more freedom to change their bids at the last minute. They don't have to obligate somebody getting there on time. They don't have to. That's a risk for them to making sure somebody's there to turn in the bid. And then one of the best things that we've saw is just the quickness on the turnaround and the accuracy of it, the information, the contractor's actual bid from a numbers perspective. But then also the way the system's set up, they cannot turn in their bid unless they have included all the required documentation that I mentioned before. So in the past, you assumed that was kind of there until you got back and checked it. Now they can't turn in their bid without it being included. So you can see there, like that bid was due at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and by 3:10 we were certain of of who the low bidder was, that the math was done right, and all the pertinent information that was required was included.
Okay. When you put all this together, I find that when I work with agencies and their consultants trying to justify a process change like this, some sort of business case or rough ROI would be created. Many times it's not just one thing like we lost some material certifications or photos needed to back up a claim in order to get reimbursed by the state, but more of a cumulative case of all of the efficiencies added together that you talked about. Did you prepare an ROI for your team to move to e-construction?
Yeah, we did. Parkways was very open. West Virginia Parkways was very open to looking at what was out there and looking for improvement. But again, the financial constraints are out there, and you have to show that there is a savings. So we kind of classified those into two categories. You have the return that's tangible, that you can put your hands on, dollar amount. And that part of the work was, or that part of the return was, eliminating non-productive drive time, being able to process the estimate more efficiently and quicker. So just those couple things right there, resulted in tangible benefits. The intangible ones that you really can't put a price on, but everybody recognizes that there is a benefit to, is just having the information out there available. So the information everybody has access to, but, also being able to provide that information to everybody and having that there, it's really not tangible. You can't put a dollar amount on that, but it's a benefit that everybody receives. So we did several things. We looked at several systems, and ultimately we decided on this one because it was what fit the mold that we needed for what we were doing.
You mentioned a little bit about, but if you could elaborate a little bit more, when you have additional time for your inspectors on the job site, how does that help your clients succeed in their project accuracy or quality?
Yeah, so we have those dates that were set to process the estimate. So those were fixed dates. We have a lot of jobs that are one person assigned to it. So, the biggest benefit to that was, or the loss in production was, just the drive time and the scan time to get that information over to the server. So that either had to be done after the contractor wasn't on site, and that's typically done on overtime. Yes, there's a big pickup there, and just the time that they spend on the job is the biggest benefit. If they're able to stay on the job rather than traveling or in the office scanning papers in, that time can be returned to the project and being on site and actually performing the inspection work.
And of course, since they'll be spending less time answering questions because people, all the stakeholders can look up information themselves, that would give them more time. Can you share some of the lessons that you've learned and your best practices you recommend to those agencies who are early in exploring e-construction, and even for those that have already implemented e-construction?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the lessons we've learned is, don't be afraid of the technology that's out there and utilize it. Research what's out there. We're making good use of the technology that's out there with the access and the information. Don't be afraid to push for progress. What we had, our system that we had with the paper format, it did work, and it met the need that we were expected to provide for the client. But now we can be more efficient, more productive for the client. So don't be afraid to push for that progress. Some of the benefits that we've gotten out of of switching over is just being able to research and find find information about inquiries from the contractor or from the client. We've by switching over to this system, we're able to get more information. It takes less time to get more information into the daily report and out of the daily report if you need it at a later time. And we've also seen, we've been using the Appia system for about 3 years now for parkways projects, and those projects are ranging in size anywhere from a couple $100,000 up to $22 million. We've been able to handle anything that we've needed to do as far as from a contract administration perspective, such as material delivered not in place, fuel and asphalt adjustments, change orders, time extension, liquidated damages. All that's either built into the system or we've been able to utilize a fairly simple workaround process to get through what we needed.
You've covered a lot in that last slide, but are there more advanced tips that come to mind that you want to leave us with, since you're such a pro now?
Well, the one advanced tip that we're utilizing right now is, since we've been using the system for about 3 years now, we're able to go back and research some of our activities and progress on contracts that we're moving forward with. So we can go back and do an analysis to tighten up our engineer's estimate dollar-wise, and also tighten up on more realistic construction timeframes for those given projects. We have a lot of repetitive type contracts that are almost annual type contracts. So we're able to get those tuned in better from a dollar amount and from a time amount.
And is there anything that involves other parts of HNTV? Like, does this go back to the design side or something?
Yeah, so that's what I was referring to. We're able to go back, that we use that information on the design side to develop upcoming contracts. So we pull that information from actuals and put it into projections for new projects.
Okay, and then of course, have you been audited by the Parkway?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you been audited by the Parkway?
No, not really. I can't say that we have as far as an audit or anything, but the information's there. They have access to all the information that's there, and they can pull that information as they need it.
Well, maybe it saved you from an audit. That could be. All right. So let's review what we've covered today. Before you implement e-construction, you should carefully examine your current procedures. You should look for issues and inefficiencies you would like to eliminate. You really have to know, how much does it really cost to follow your current processes? You have to know all of the stakeholders and how e-construction will impact them. If a project is almost complete, finish it with the current processes. Start your new e-construction on either a project with several months to go on it or a brand new project. And don't tackle every aspect of e-construction on the first project. Do it in phases. And now we have time to start answering some of the questions that you've submitted. We'll take as many as we have time for today, and then follow up with a complete list of questions and answers via email as part of our follow-up to this webinar. Let's start with a straightforward question. Danny, how did your inspectors like the idea of moving off paper and onto e-construction?
I mean, I would say, it's a change. Again, the system we had, everybody was used to, and it did work. Um, so there's always reluctancy to change. I will say, we've got 20 inspectors now that are utilizing the Appia system, either through the mobile app or laptops. Um, Everybody seems to be fine with it now. Didn't take a whole lot of training to get them up to speed. The system is very intuitive and pretty easy to teach. Um, so again, there's some reluctancy for change at the beginning, but everybody's happy with it now. They see the benefit and the efficiency out of it. Um, yeah, so I think everybody's okay with it now.
Okay. Um, do you think you'll get more work from other clients who hear about you using e-construction?
Yeah, we hope. We always hope for more work.
Everybody does. Yes, that's true. And this last question, has your management said anything about what e-construction has done for your management?
Yeah, I mean, I think our management sees the efficiency and the ability to get the information that they need. Um, we get requests from upper management or from the client. We're able to answer those more quickly um, and more efficiently. A lot of times when we get those calls or the requests in, we can look that up and answer the question usually before the phone call's over. Where in the past we'd have to, I'll get back to you. We'd have to dig through some information, some reports and estimates and Excel sheets, and then track it back to an individual report. The way it is now with the Appia system, we're able to find that information within a couple minutes. Like I said, so I think they see the advantages of having that information there and readily available.
Okay. Well, thank you, Danny, very much for the time you spent with us today. Um, we certainly went through that faster than we did on our rehearsal. Uh, let's see. Okay. Well, we always like to let our audience know about the next webinar that we have scheduled. So please stay tuned and consider joining us for our next panel discussion. That'll focus on the impacts on the infrastructure bill, specifically on state agencies and municipalities. Oh, wait. Hey, we got some questions. So I'm backing up since we finished early. Um, anonymous, how long did Appia take to implement across HNTV or across your office? Because it's not across all of HNTV.
It's not across HNTB. We use it for one client with HNTB that I'm aware of. I'm not sure if other offices are using Appia. It's what we use in West Virginia for the West Virginia Parkways Authority. Um, so we kind of just phased it in. We had projects that were, but we had projects that were wrapping up under the old system. We finished those out utilizing the old system. We started new projects after we just picked a date and said, anything after this date moving forward, we're going to use the Appia system. Anything prior to that date, we're going to finish out. We did have one project that was it was a larger $20 million or so project that was about 40% done. That still had another 16 to 18 months to go on it. We did convert that one over to Appia mid-project. We were able to do that, and that worked out pretty good. But as far as being able to switch over, we just picked a date and moved over. So as the projects rolled out, we converted those over to the Appia system.
That sparked a question from me. When you converted a project that was already underway, are there some considerations or something that people should think about before they cut over a project from paper to e-construction?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, was just being able to, when converting from an Excel dollar amount that was paid previously to the contractor to getting that up to date into the Appia system. Uh, just the rounding of items and pay amounts, slight discrepancies on that. So it took some adjustments on those to get those to equalize out. And then the one disadvantage of doing that is now your records are in two separate systems. So we have records the old way, paper form up to 40%. Then they picked up all the way to closeout in another system. So that it's not as concise where all the information's in one location. So that's just something to consider if you want to convert midstream. We felt it was worth it on that size project with the amount of time that we had left on it.
Another question that came in, how well does this work when handling change orders?
Yeah, so the change order process is set up within the system. When you generate a change order, when you have a change on the project, goes through the authorizations and the up the ladder through the owner and the contractor for everybody to sign off on it. Everything's constrained within the system to not allow payment on the change order until it's properly approved by everybody. So had no issues with working on change orders, but there is a set flow in there, and it made a lot of sense to me when we started implementing them. The flow and the requirement is under the way you would normally process a change order.
And question that perhaps I should be answering, and not you. Does Appia replace Ashtoware Project? And I don't know if you know anything about Ashtoware Project.
I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before I answer that question, why don't you give me your thoughts about Ashtoware Project and Appia?
So I've not used it or seen it, but I do know that. So we have two clients in West Virginia, West Virginia Parkways Authority and the West Virginia Division of Highways. And my understanding is Division of Highways is moving to Ashtoware Project starting January 1st. So we have about half of our inspection staff is assigned to the Division of Highways and the other half is to Parkways. So we will be on the projects we're assigned to starting January 1. We'll be becoming real familiar with Ashtoware.
Yeah, and Kansas Turnpike Authority, which is similar to Parkway, is also Appia Bid Express user as well. And the other thing, just for clarification for the people watching this, Ashtoware AASHTO is an organization of DOTs, and that organization, AASHTO, has products that they provide to the DOTs, and it is focused entirely on getting the DOTs what they need, and they need different information than most local governments or turnpikes would need out there as well. Well, those are all the questions that we had there. We've talked about the next upcoming webinar will be on the impact of the infrastructure bill. We all hope that that passes. And that'll we'll focus on it from the perspective of state and local agencies. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We hope you learned a little bit more about e-construction today. And if you have any questions or you'd like to know more about tailoring your record-keeping process, reach out to us at infotechinc.com/Appia. And one last request. After this webinar ends, you'll be redirected to a brief survey that'll help us improve our future webinars. We do take your comments seriously and rely on this information. Have a good and safe afternoon. Thank you very much.